Good day, and thank you for joining me for this children's story for May 31st, Pentecost. And today's story is Doogie Dog and his busy schedule. And so here's Doogie Dog. He's, as you can see, sort of, well, I'm trying to get, there you can see him. Okay, so he's going to help me tell the story this evening. So once upon a time, there was a young puppy named Doogie Dog. A kind family adopted him, and he soon learned where he fit into the scheme of things. He was there to make sure they got up in time to go to work, ate meals at regular hours, got lots of exercise, and got the right amount of sleep that they needed. In short, he was there to generally make their life easier and keep them healthy. And that meant he was a very, very busy dog. But he didn't mind. In the morning, he would pounce on them in bed, while they were still in bed, right after the alarm clock went off, start pulling the covers off in order to get them out of bed. And then he would run around the whole house, making them chase him just to make sure they got their morning exercise. And then he would sit and beg for his food, because when he did that, he knew they would stop and eat their food at the same time too. And outside, he would run and play with them, always making sure they had to run after him just a little bit to get more exercise. And when it was time for bed, he would bug them, regardless of what they were doing, just to emphasize, bedtime, bedtime, stop, go to bed. And in no time at all, he had his family trained. He was a very good dog, doing a very good job, keeping them fit, on time, and rested. He didn't mind. In fact, he loved it. He especially loved how he could relax when they went to work or school, because that was when he would curl up and fall asleep. After all, he had to be well rested and full of energy for when they came home later in the day and he had to get back to work. Still, there were occasional problems. One day he noticed the woman had sore feet. So he took her shoes. They said stole them, but they were wrong. He took her shoes and he started to chew them, just to make them a bit softer for her. They'd be more comfortable. She got mad and didn't appreciate all the hard work he'd done to help her with her sore feet. In fact, he got punished, and he didn't understand that at all. I have another dog here that's looking at me. It's a hard life. It's tough being a dog, he exclaimed, just before he started bugging them to tell them it was time for bed. One day, however, everything changed. A pandemic hit. But Doogie Dog didn't know what that meant. What he did know was that everyone was staying home. No one was going to school or work, and he may not have understood what was going on, but he did realize his job had suddenly gotten a lot bigger. For some reason, the alarm clock stopped going off. It was up to Doogie to make sure everyone got up on time. They didn't seem to appreciate him doing that either, but he knew it was important for them and for their own good. Also, since they were home the whole day, Doogie knew he had to get them exercising more. He started to insist on going out every hour and running around, making sure they always had to run around chasing him. He still begged for food, knowing they would stop and eat too. But now he had 3 meals to eat instead of 2. Breakfast, lunch, and supper. Just a second here. Come here. Come on. Oops. We have another dog here. He doesn't like looking at people. No. Okay. Go one down. Yeah. Okay. Please, please. Thank you. Doogie knew he had to get them exercising more. He still begged for food, knowing they would stop and eat. But now he had 3 meals to eat instead of 2, breakfast, lunch, and supper. He didn't really want that much food, and he didn't need that much food. But of course, who turned down food anyway? A chance for an extra meal? No. And it seemed they needed the 3 meals a day or more. And so he had to keep an eye open to make sure they got what they needed. He also had to look after the children more. They were staying in front of a screen and for hours. That can't be good, he decided. So he began to bother them more, making sure they had to chase him around inside the house, and then getting them to take him outside where they could get even more exercise. Hi, Peanut. That's my dog in the background there. The adults didn't seem too happy, but Doogie thought that if they couldn't take time to make sure the children got their exercise, it was up to him. Poor Doogie. I'll bring him back. He was so busy looking after everyone else that he wasn't getting enough sleep himself. He was missing his afternoon naps and started becoming rather tired and sickly and even cranky. His human family were too busy doing whatever they were doing to notice what was going on with him. But his animal friends noticed. And Bobby Beaver told him he needed help. Actually, he told Doogie he needed 2 kinds of help. First, he needed to take time for himself. Time to recharge. People might be home longer, they told him, but he should keep to his own routine, just like Mr. Peanut there kept to his routine, burying himself in this blanket. Life had changed for the family, but he couldn't do everything, not even everything for them. Bobby Beaver reminded Doogie that he wasn't God, and God never intended for him to do everything all on his own. The family had to take some responsibility for themselves. I know I'm not God, but they need so much help, Doogie protested. And that's why we said you needed help. Chris Crow jumped in, and we're here to help. The other crows nodded. They offered to help chase the children when they were outside, and said they would even get into the garbage bags more often, and that way the adults would end up chasing them too. The squirrels volunteered, and so did the rabbits, who thought they could invent a game that would keep the children busy and give them all the exercise they would need. And Bobby Beaver asked, what about another dog to help you out inside? No way. Bobby Beaver didn't like that idea at all. The house was his responsibility. He didn't want to share it. And still he listened. And he took a lot of their advice. And gradually things got a little better for him. Life settled down into a new routine. Doogie Dog still got everyone up first thing in the morning. He still made sure they ate their breakfast and settled down somewhere, starting to work. And then he was free to trot out, go to bed for a well-deserved rest. His job was done for a while. Others would take over while he recharged. And then he'd be back to take over in the evening when they were finished. Yep. You learned to share. You learned to ask for help, did you? Well, he has to think that one through. Sometimes we're like Doogie Dog. We think we have to do it all, and we're weak if we ask for help. But that's not what God intended, and that's not what Jesus showed us. There were a lot of things that Jesus was doing. He was teaching and healing, performing miracles, and he was also just there when people wanted to talk with him. And you can imagine at times that it was too busy for him, too much for him. And that's why the Gospels tells us time and time again that Jesus would withdraw and pray. For example, Luke chapter 5, verse 16 states, But Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. And later on in chapter 6, it says, one of those days, Jesus went out to a mountainside to pray and spent the night praying to God. And when morning came, he called his disciples to him and chose 12 of them, whom he also designated apostles. In other words, Jesus spent time by himself, time in prayer to recharge himself, to strengthen his ties with God. And then he appointed others to go and do his work, to help him. And they did what he did, teaching and preaching and performing miracles and being there when people needed them. They showed people what God was like by what they said, by what they did, by how they lived, and how they treated others. And that's why in the church we have ministers, we have elders, we have Sunday school teachers, choir, ladies' aid, so many groups involved, just to help God do the work and help the minister do the work of the church in the world. But the church is more than God. Yeah. The church is more than Jesus. The church is more than one priest or minister or a building. The church is all of us together doing God's work in God's world. Let us pray. Dear Jesus, you did so much for us, and we thank you for all you did. We thank you also for showing us that we're not on our own and that we need others to help us at times. Thank you for reminding us to take time off, to rest, to pray, to let you recharge us. Thank you for bringing other people into our lives to help us when we need it. Thank you for just being there. And we offer our prayer in your name. Amen. Thank you, and thank you for joining me. See you next Sunday. Take care. Bye-bye.